the Merritt City Council regular board meeting to order. Before we start on anything, Mr. MacArthur, you have a new employee that I'd like you to introduce to council and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we're very pleased to have Jana Bradshaw with us here today. Jana has joined our team as community planner and just started last Monday, so just her second week here, and we're hoping that she can stick around for some time to come. She joined us from, most recently, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, which a lot of people would know as Fort McMurray. And I don't know, Jana, if you want to say a couple words.
No, it's just a pleasure to be here working with you all and to have met most of you now here. Thank you.
Well, thank you and welcome. And you'll enjoy the weather in Merritt a lot more than you will in Fort McMurray. Okay, and we hope that you stay for a while. So that's our intent. So we now have public input, and there's a number of different responses. Can we have staff read out the responses?
Absolutely, Your Worship. And the horrifying realization of it. Thank you. Let's grab this one with a longer cable. Thank you, Your Worship. So these are all public inputs items. Obviously, at the moment, public health orders prohibit the public from showing up in person, and so anything which is submitted in written form is provided to you as though people were attending the meeting. So this is the first one from Doug Fleming of 2201 Parker Drive, who wrote in about zoning bylaw 2316/2021, which is on your agenda tonight for first and second readings. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for the opportunity to comment on the process for zoning amendment bylaw number 2316/2021. I begin by mentioning that I fully support a quality manufactured housing development on the old grassland property. This is what the developer actually wanted in the first place, and what a large number of the adjacent residents wanted as well. The City Planning Department, for all intents and purposes, is recommending against this revised proposal. You only have to read the City Planner's report to understand this. If Council has the city planning process mastered, well then you never really need to consult with the citizens of your community again, so reject this application. If, on the other hand, the interests of your constituents is important to you, please at least proceed with this application to public hearing. And the next item is from Kathy Norris, which is on the same item. She's at 2238 Parker Drive, Merritt. This says, I understand I only have 2 minutes of your time, but I urgently ask that the recommendations being presented to Mayor and Council tonight by Don MacArthur in regards to the proposed zoning amendment bylaw number 2316/2021 be refused. Please note that the appropriate place to refuse this application, should Council decide to refuse it, is following the public hearing, which I understand is our lawful right as taxpayers. To have input at a public hearing, which Don MacArthur's recommendations virtually deny us, makes me question due process. As per my questions and emails, which I sent months ago to Mayor and Council, asking if they took the time to drive to Gallagher Lake Modular Home Development in Oliver to see what the modular home development that this park would follow, still goes unanswered. Not even one person replied. It was Don MacArthur who was the one who told me I shouldn't have an opinion unless I looked at that park. It is beautiful and a well-planned development, using arid, low-maintenance plants, low water consumption, and for people 55 plus. I spoke with people as far away as Toronto, Ontario, who have moved to this park. I ask that you allow us to have our say at a public hearing.
And can I just respond to that? A public hearing would happen regardless of whether we look at this application again or whether we proceed in the previous way that it was going. A public hearing will still be necessary. Thank you.
So the next letter is from Swaranjit Chahal on the same item. I am writing to you this afternoon out of concern regarding a staff report written by Don MacArthur that you will be considering tonight. The report seems to suggest that Council should refuse giving proposed Bylaw 2316-2021 first and second reading, as opposed to recommending first and second reading so that the application can move forward to a formal public hearing and then a final decision by you as Council. We develop modular home communities in the BC interior. Our well-known development is the 127-unit Gallagher Lake Village Park in Oliver, BC. We take pride in providing high-end communities for our customers and are involved in not only the development of each community, but also the overall management. We've been in negotiations with Spyam Holdings LP since last year regarding a possible partnership that would involve leasing the land from Spyam and overseeing the development and management of the project long-term. We expressed our concern to Spyam last fall about the inclusion of townhome units within the property boundaries when we were made aware of the approved rezoning. It is very unusual to see a modular home development include other forms of housing, as is being put forward by the city's planner. As I'm sure you can appreciate, the modular home ownership structure is very different than that of other forms of housing, i.e. single detached, townhomes, apartments. Modular home pads are rented or leased out, while the actual units are owned by the occupants. Our business model works best when it involves a single housing product, i.e. modular homes. We indicated to Spyam that we would be interested in partnering on developing the 9-acre parcel, but only if the entire site was zoned for modular homes. We do not develop modular home communities that incorporate other forms of housing product. To do so would negatively impact the type of product we provide our customers. If the R7 zoning were to remain, we would no longer be interested in partnering with Spyam to develop the site, which we feel is ideal for a modular home community. We are excited to be entering the Merritt market and bring a housing product that doesn't presently exist within the city. We encourage you to take a drive down to Gallagher Lake Village Park to see the type of development we take pride in and would like to bring to the city of Merritt. I ask that Council give Bylaw 2316-2021 first and second reading, so the rezoning application can proceed to a public hearing as soon as possible. I very much look forward to presenting our vision for this development at the public hearing and answering any questions you or the public may have. And sorry, at this point, can I ask Linda Brooke to take over if I have technical things to do?
Good evening, Mayor Brown and Council. I'm writing to you this evening with respect to the staff report. Sorry, is this from the same people?
That's from Jerry Malanka.
This is the one,
Okay.
if I can draw the attention to our emails, this is one that came to us by email. It didn't make it to the agenda, but if you want to read it, it's in your email.
I'm writing to you this evening with respect to the staff report before you for bylaw number 2316-2021, 3350 Voght Street. The staff report speaks to our application for a rezoning of a portion of lands at 3350 Voght Street. In the report, Mr. MacArthur has declined to make a recommendation for Council to give first and second reading to bylaw number 2316-2021. In my 20 years of experience as a professional planner, staff in most municipalities will recommend Council give a bylaw first and second reading to a bylaw in order to advance the application to a public hearing. A public hearing not only affords Council an opportunity to hear from the public for or against an application, but it also affords Council an opportunity to hear from the applicant. In my experience, if a file manager does not support an application, they will note their concerns in a staff report which is presented to Council during or shortly after a public hearing. This allows the applicant the opportunity to respond to staff's concerns and comments and for Council to weigh both sides. Instances where staff typically don't support first and second reading is when an application has been deemed incomplete or is clearly contrary to municipal policies and regulations, for example, the OCP. As noted in the report before you tonight, Mr. MacArthur clearly states that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the official community plan. The staff report seems to suggest that the application before you this evening is the same as what was applied for back in September and October, and therefore Council should not grant first and second reading. That is not the case. Back in 2020, Spyam Holdings applied to rezone the entire parcel residential modular dwelling, R4. However, it was recommended by Mr. MacArthur but our application was more likely to be supported if it also included medium-density residential R7. We amended our application based on this conversation. What we didn't realize at the time was that the area residents would be in such opposition to the inclusion of townhomes along Voght Street, and that it would be difficult to secure partners interested in developing the site with a mix of modular dwellings and townhomes. The staff report before you tonight speaks in detail about Voght Street streetscape and CPTED. Mr. MacArthur speaks to fence height and pedestrian safety. While these are valid concerns and considerations when evaluating development application, they are matters that are to be addressed at the development permit and subdivision stages of a project. To paraphrase Mr. MacArthur during an October 13th public hearing, issues such as form and character of the buildings, landscaping, and overall site are to be addressed at the development permit stage of the planning process. The primary consideration for City Council when evaluating a rezoning application is whether the proposed use is appropriate for the subject site, and seeing as how the majority of the site is already zoned R4, the application should not be allowed to proceed. The application should be allowed to proceed, sorry. I respectfully ask that Council give Bylaw 2316-2021 first and second reading and direct administration to set a public hearing for a Council meeting in June. Afford my client an opportunity to have their application go through due process before you as Council render a decision for or against the proposed rezoning. Respectfully, Jerry Malenka, Manager of Planning and Urban Design for True. The next.
Your Worship, Susan Lillian from Spine had intended to present virtually in person, but unfortunately it doesn't look like she's been able to join the Teams meeting, so at this point, Ms. Burke, can you please read what out? Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Attention Mayor Brown and Council members. This is regarding zoning application 3350 Voght Street, Merritt, BC. Dear Mayor Brown and Council, I wish to address my concerns this evening in regards to agenda item 8.4, zoning amendment bylaw number 2316-2021, 3350 Voght Street. Should Council decide this evening to disallow the first and second reading 2316, the first and second reading of the above bylaw, you should be taking away Spine Holdings' right to due process. This new application should not be dismissed outright without giving public and input to giving the public an opportunity to speak to the application, as well as giving Spine Holdings an opportunity to address the strong comments made by the city's planner in clear opposition to this application. Typically, Council, in giving first and second reading to an application that is consistent with OCP policies, is a formality. The decision of Mayor and Council is typically reserved until after a public hearing. It is unusual for administration not to bring forward a recommendation to Council regarding first and second reading of a bylaw when the application is consistent with the city's OCP policies. The purpose of a rezoning application is to determine if the proposed use R4 is appropriate on the site. A rezoning should not be about the height of a fence or whether people feel safe walking along Voght Street at night. These concerns should be raised, addressed at the development permit stage, and be based on city policy and regulations. Spine Holdings have made every effort to find a developer to partner with the townhome portion of the site. However, because of the nature of the tenure, lease only, and the mix of modular with townhome dwellings, Spine was not able to find a partnership that worked. While the city planner may want to see townhomes in this location and townhomes that front onto a major collector road, there is no market at this location for that type nor design that would fit Spine's business model. Spine has entered into a letter of intent with a recognized developer for a modular home community. This partnership is contingent upon the removal of the R7 zoning. When we put out our expression of interest this past fall, all interested parties expressed concern with the intermixing of townhomes and modular homes. In addition to the public hearing held last year for the original application, Spine also held an open house. In both instances, we heard loud and clear that the majority of residents were concerned with the R7 zoning. Concerns ranged from the height of the townhouses to the fronting onto Voght Street to the visual impacts townhomes would have on the residents residing north of the subject lands. The rezoning application now before council is not the same application that went before council last fall. So to have the city manager suggest that the new application not be given first and second reading, therefore not allowing the public an opportunity to speak to this application, nor an opportunity for the applicant owner to present their arguments in favor, is potentially setting a bad precedent for the city. The city planner has stated in his report that the proposed zoning of R4 is consistent with the OCP. The city planner has not provided any internal, external comments in opposition to the application as noted in this report. Thank you. Regards, Susan Rowling, Chair, Spine Holdings, LLP.
Thank you. Well, that was quite unique. Does anyone have any questions? I guess there's no applicant that can actually respond to it anyways. Okay. So I'll take that back. Any questions will have to be asked at 8.4. Okay. So we go on to the adoption of the minutes, 4.1. I need a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the special council meeting held on May 11th, 2021 be adopted. And so we have Fluck and I think second Etchart. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, none, carried. So 4.2, the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 11th, 2021 be adopted. New mover? Christopherson, seconder, Fair. Errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Public hearing, there is none. 6.1, general matters and delegations. We have Mark Nendick online to speak to us regarding Endeavour to be better. And there he is. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, this is my first meeting I've done with you guys, so I'm just trying it out. But anyways, thanks so much for having me. I just wanted to take some time to explain to you about our program, Endeavour to be Better. I'm sure some of you know it. I didn't do a presentation. We've all been in a lot of Teams meetings recently, and I felt like if I just spoke from the heart and what my personal feelings are on it, it might be a little more interesting than slideshow. So that's why I'm just going to speak to you from the heart. So Endeavour to be Better program is part of the Nicola Valley Shelter Support Society. So we have 3 programs, the Endeavour to be Better, the Nicola Valley Shelter, and Housing First. So we're all part of this. I was actually approached by Marlene Jones, which you all know, who works at the CPO. I really, if I'm being honest, I didn't know about this program. And because of some of the work I've done, I think I saw most of you when Darius Sam won his award for the big run he did to raise all the money. So I've been working with Darius for quite a while, and I've been pretty open about some of my struggles in the past. And I also have a coaching, health and wellness coaching business, PFN Coaching. And Marlene reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in hearing about the program and maybe take part in it. And after we met, we decided, I put a proposal together to work with the program, and luckily, fortunately for me, they took me on. And to be honest, like I said, I didn't know about it before I started, and it was really overwhelming. But because of my struggles, you know, I've been sober for 9 years, and I've struggled with addiction in my life. And so a lot of the clients we have at the Endeavour to be Better building, which is the house right beside 7-Eleven on the main drag there, I mean, I drove out by it for years not knowing what was actually in there. So I went in and we had one employee, Trent Abraham, who's been there for a couple of years. He worked with the shelter also. And they brought me on as the coordinator for the program. And so I came in, like I said, I've been there for 4 months now. And what we are is a day program, which is available. So what we do basically is we offer a breakfast and coffee to anyone that wants to in the community. Most of our clients are either living in the shelter or homeless or couch surfing in between places. Some of them are staying with the ASH program. So every morning we're open at 8 a.m., 7 days a week. And we give an opportunity for people to come in, have breakfast and coffee first thing in the morning. And especially in the winter this year, it was cold. And so it gave people a place to go. So we're there first thing in the morning, we serve breakfast. And the idea being there is to create relationships and make people feel comfortable, because a lot of the clients we have are displaced. They don't have a sense of community. They're in between where they're at in life. And so we're trying to make them feel safe. And once we build relationships, potentially lead them to some sort of treatment. Many of our clients are mentally ill. I'm not a doctor, of course, but mentally ill, struggling deeply in addiction problems. And so we're trying to help facilitate moving farther along in the system to help get treatment. But it all starts with the relationships and making people feel comfortable. And so that's what we're doing. And one of the things, if I'm rambling here, just tell me, but I'm just telling you off the top of my head what we're doing. One of the first things I did when I came on was is I brought on more staff. So Trent was there by himself. And when he goes to do outreach, so outreach would be going out into the community to meet people that maybe aren't ready to come to our program. And so Trent would go out for outreach, he would have to lock the door on the building. And so if people came by to get a coffee or food or get out of the weather, the door was locked. So fortunately, I was able to bring on some staff. Funny enough, I brought on Darius Sam from the Run. He himself has been sober for 9 months and is a Indigenous young male who's seeing the other side of some of the troubles he's had. And so he felt like he wanted to give back and work with some of these people too. So we brought on Darius. He's been there for about as long as I have been. Maybe he started 2 weeks later. We brought on Christina Leo. She's a female. She works on weekends. So it's nice to have a female presence in there. It's a lot of males in there, if I'm being honest, and some of our clients are female. So it's nice to have a female in there. And then we also have a practicum student, Tercel Mansfield, who's also Indigenous, and he did a social work program in Vancouver and was, the teacher reached out to me and Trent and asked if he could do his practicum within our facility. We said, sure, no problem. And he's been great, amazing, young, enthusiastic. So another reason they brought me on is to connect services in town. So one of the problems we are dealing with is, we have Ask Wellness, which is doing great work with Carrie Cook. We have the ASH program. We have the DART program. Like I said, we have the shelter. We have Conayt. So we have all these programs in town. Weren't necessarily communicating well because everyone is swamped. So I've been fortunate to meet with every one of these programs, and they've been really open. And, like I said, I'm fairly new, so that I'm so far behind on the learning curve, but everyone has been great about connecting and wanting to help each other. So now we're sharing clients. Obviously there's confidentiality rules that we have to follow, but within those bounds, we're sharing information and helping clients navigate through the system. Another thing that we've done recently is we've created a work experience program. So now from 12 to 3, every day of the week, as long as we have work, we started off just doing garbage pickup. So you might have seen, I'm sure some of you might have seen the guys in the vests walking around picking up garbage around town. That was our Endeavour to Be Better clients. We have anywhere from 2 to 8, 9 people at a time going out and doing this work. They're all supervised. They're covered by WCB, and they get paid minimum wage. So it's 14, 16 an hour, I believe, which is for some of these people, I'd say 99% of them are on disability, on social services. And so this extra little bit of money can help them with bills, catch up on rent, whatever other things, also give them a sense of purpose. Like one of the problems I see a lot is idle hands get into trouble, as we all know. And so we have the breakfast program from 8 to noon, coffee, and then we head out to work from 12 to 3. So what we're trying to do there is use up most of the day to keep our clients active and busy, engaged, doing meaningful things, less time sitting wherever they're staying and dwelling. And unfortunately, a lot of the peers to the people, our clients, are up to no good. And obviously, it's easily to get dissuaded. So again, we started with the garbage pickup. The gang got a little bit sick of garbage pickup because it's fairly monotonous. So just recently in the last month, we began lawn care. So now we're going out to help. Our first client was a widower, been a Merritt resident her whole life. And I know her, and she asked if we could come by. And so we did her lawn, we cut her grass, we did the weeds. We have a trailer, like we cleaned up her whole yard. We were there several times. Now in the last month, I think we're up to 7 clients, 7 different homes that we're working with. And I mean, the attempt is not to take work away from any of the current businesses in town. We're just helping people that maybe don't have the means to hire a service, or, they're just not able to. So, and we're doing word of mouth. We're not promoting this in the paper to try and undercut any other businesses. That's not the purpose of it. And like I said, some of our clients, this is the first job they've ever had in their life, which is, some of the people we have are in their 60s. They've never had gainful employment, grade 4 education, grade 9 education. So we're trying to give them an opportunity to feel like a part of society. One of the things I noticed right away is there's unfortunately a stigma with that these people are bad or they don't want to do well. And from my experience, everyone that I've met has just been want to be anyone, just like you and I, like anyone in this room. Unfortunately, have suffered some trauma along the way. Something's gone wrong in life, bad turn here, bad turn there, and they've end up in this circumstance. And just wanting to do better. I mean, they're not perfect, but wanting to do better, at least the people that we see. So, and then I guess part of the reason why I'm here speaking to you tonight is our funding. I mean, funding is a problem for us. First off, before I complain, I want to say thank you very much to the city. You guys have provided funding for us, and that's very helpful. It's given me a job. It's given all the people that are helping out a job. So we use your money, and we really appreciate that. We're also funded by Iqaluit Health. They've been very generous in donating money to our program. Tech Kaminko. So I just got a check for $3,000 from Tech Kaminko to buy the lawn care equipment. So to this point, I've been using stuff from my own house for our lawn care business. Now we're going to be able to buy our own stuff and be fully functioning, which is awesome. So again, funding, we have funding till July, I believe, and we have a application into the city, I think, for $180,000, but it doesn't get reviewed till September, I believe. So one of the problems that I find in my short amount of time is these people are looking for stability. These clients, individuals are looking for stability in their life. And some of our programming in the shelter has been in this situation in the past where they're open, weather permitted, and then as soon as the weather gets better, they're closed. That's not the case this year, but it has been in the past. Endeavour to Be Better was closed for 2 months just before Christmas. So we need funding just so we can keep the doors open. We have our clients, when things start going well, I find they start getting suspicious of when it's going to end. When's this program going to end? When are we going to stop working? I'm nervous about what's going to happen in my future. And so I'd love to be able to say, you know what, we got you. We're good for a year, for 3 years, for 5 years, and we're going to expand. Like the reason they brought me on was we were doing things at a certain level, and now we want to expand. Councilman Fair shared a demographic with me, and I've seen a bunch of of demographics. 93% overdose rate in the First Nations community this January, which is a huge number of overdoses, and it's a big problem in our community. The shelter has just recently put in a safe use room, which is, I think, for some people maybe counterintuitive, giving people a place to use drugs. But to be honest, overdoses happen because people are doing drugs by themselves, or they're getting drugs that are laced with fentanyl, benzos, and if they can do it in a safe place or with somebody else, reduces the risk of overdose. So, we have a safe use house over at the shelter. Anyway, so yeah, the funding is obviously a big important part of why I'm speaking to you, and awareness about our program. Like I said, I've lived here for 13 years. I really didn't know about it, and that's my fault for not being aware. I think we all have a duty to be aware of what's going on in our community. I love this community, and I think all of you do, of course. And I would just, we're trying to do our best to make it better, and instead of band-aiding the problem, really creating solutions and to the bigger problems. Yeah, I rambled for 20 minutes there. If I missed anything, let me know, but that's the top of my head.
Mr. Nendick, you mentioned that you put in an application with the city for $180,000. Mr. Smith, can you speak to that, please?
You guys will note that the last grant application that we submitted, a significant portion of that was to support and assist with the Endeavour to Be Better program. So that was the one there where Mr. Luck had said, is there any way we could be increasing the amount on this? And so a lot of that increase actually was for this program.
Perfect. So that's where the funding is coming from. That's what the ask for the city is, and it's still in process, is it not? Have we received?
No, that's correct. I think more apt way to put this would be it's an ask through the city, not necessarily from the city, because it's ultimately from another funding source. But we were the ones that ultimately submitted that grant application, and as Mr. Nendick suggested, is we would likely be looking at September for a date of finding out whether we're going to be successful with that grant or not. So there might be a little bit of variance in terms of when we'll learn, but in somewhat of a state of flux until then.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nendick? Well, we have him on the, I was going to say on the phone, but.
Thank you, Mr. Mendeck, for the presentation. Much appreciated, and much appreciation for the work that you're doing in the community. I think it's just crucial and critical that it gets done by people like you, especially who have the experience and the knowledge directly to deal with what's going on. You mentioned that we all have a duty to be aware of what's going on in our community, and I think that is so true. I think the prevalence of First Nations overdose and overdose deaths in our community is it's outrageous. And I think that we, as a community, have almost zero awareness of it. So I guess my question to you is, where do you think we can get that information? How can we make that information public so that people actually know how severe it is and what's actually going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, a lot of these slides that we get access to is the public doesn't see them. I mean, we can do a better job of sharing the numbers. I think people, to be honest, come see the facility, go meet with the people. We have a habit of, if you see people on the street or maybe using, you just walk by, look the other way, don't engage. Every one of the people that I've dealt with so far, you say, hi, how's it going? They're very nice, polite. I mean, not everyone, I can't speak for everyone. But I think just make them feel like people and maybe offer, do you need anything? How's your day going? It's the that's again with the safe use site. So part of the problem we have is there's a shame component in our community, I believe. People are using in private, and I'm not suggesting they use out on the street, but they're hiding away. And a lot of other bigger city centers have safe injection sites or bigger buildings. Like ideally, in a dream world for me, I'd love to see a facility. So what happens if someone comes to me and they start using our program and they say, hey, this is great, I love it, I want to move to the next step. We don't have much in Merritt, to be honest, to offer them. We have the ASH program, which has 6 beds. So that's assisted living. And then the DART program, which also is a group-based treatment, which is only 6 people at a time. So if people want to get another problem, so if people want to go to treatment, we have to ship them out of town, which is hard to get in. Everything, because of the opioid crisis we're in right now, everything is booked. So, and a lot of times when people have a lucid moment where they're feeling like, okay, I'm feeling optimistic that I can get help right now, we say, you know what, in 3 weeks, we can get you over here. Well, you missed your window and you can't do anything about it. And maybe they fall back and change their mind. Another problem we have is we have lack of counseling, available counselors to speak to people. It's hard to get in to speak to someone. So if we had something in our community where all these services were in the community, like a treatment center or a detox center, or have all our programs in one building so we can all work together, that'd be very beneficial. Hopefully that answers your question, Travis. I know it's a big thing that needs to be talked to more openly, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like for me personally, it really started to hit home in the last year, and coincidentally today, so 2 people prior to today, I'd heard of through my connections in my business through bicycles that it died, and today I heard of a third. And it's just, you know, I just can't help but think that only because of my connection to those people through bicycles is the way I knew about those deaths. You know, their friends told me because they knew that I knew them. So it boggles my mind to think about how many of those deaths just go unnoticed in the general population.
Yeah, 100%. I know exactly. And bicycles, that's the way they get around. A lot of these people, they may have nothing, but they do have a bike to get around. So yeah, I mean, it's so hard. You do a lot of work. Someone gets a bad batch of drugs or goes through a rough time and they overdose or commit suicide. Suicide is a problem we're dealing with as well. Lack of hope, you know, no direction, not sure what to do. So yeah, that's why the people I'm working with are working hard every single day to try and do the best we can do.
And what we've been told is that interior health is the link to start all of this. So we've been doing our best to let them know that we understand there's an opioid crisis across the province and that we aren't isolated from that. So we do our best. We keep continuing to talk about it with the ministry and just ensure that if there's anything we need here, it's definitely to do with addictions. And I just want to congratulate you on the 9 years sobriety, and that's quite a mark.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It was, to be honest, it was the best decision I've ever made in my life, and I'm not against drugs or alcohol. I just know my own personality, and it's just, for my family and I, it's the best decision I could have made. So that's why I'm so passionate about wanting to help people just start moving in the right direction. It doesn't have to be quit right away. Just start making small steps forward in their life and try and get better any way we can do it. And I appreciate you talking about a addiction center. If there's anything we can do, any presentation you need us to do, I'm happy to join and speak on it anytime.
down the Logan Lake.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but if you aren't, look in that direction because they have a program that could work for you.
Yes, I've been in contact with Vision Quest. Yes, they've been good. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
No unfinished business. On to bylaws, 8.1. Ms. Brick, can you give us a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So before you today is an amendment to the cemetery bylaw. In 2017, the City of Merritt adopted a cemetery master plan. This master plan includes the extension of the cemetery and the development of a cremation garden. The columbarium that the city has purchased will be featured within this garden. The city has started work on this expansion project, which is expected to be completed in 2022. The cemetery bylaw 2244 was adopted by council in 2018, prior to the final purchase decision of the columbarium. The cemetery bylaw, it includes specific wording regarding brass plaques, font sizes and stylings for niche faceplates. This wording is inconsistent with the styling and sizing of the granite memorial stone faceplates, which have been provided with the final columbarium that was purchased by the city. The amending bylaw for consideration this evening updates the wording in the bylaw to coincide with the inscription process for the memorial stones on the columbarium and to increase the maximum capacity for the larger niches. There's two sizes of niches in there. There's 30 units or 30 niches that would be able to hold 2 urns. There's 10 niches that would be able to hold 3 urns. The proposed wording will ensure that there is continuity of the overall appearance of the niche memorial stones and the black face plates, while providing flexibility of design for the family. However, the City of Merritt would retain the final approval for each of the designs to ensure compliance with the bylaw. Thank you, Your Worship. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Ms. Brooke? I have a question. When we first purchased this columbarium, I understood it was to be in its current place permanently, because when I asked at that time, is it going to be moved to the new setting, I think I was told no. Has that changed, Mr. Smith? Can you speak to that, please?
You're dead on with this, Your Worship. Initially, the idea was, well, in fact, I'm going to go way back, say early 2017, when you very first considered this. It was before council and saying that this isn't the location for columbarium in the master plan, but if you want to put it somewhere now, we could put it somewhere in the interim. So it was kind of up in the air as to whether it was going to be temporary or not. When we brought it in last time, I did think it was going to be the permanent place for it. But it's a horrible place for a columbarium. There's no place to sit and enjoy and kind of reminisce, which is typical of a columbarium garden. And so we have the opportunity now, because we are going to be building out some of that back portion as part of the capital project for this year, to do justice to what was, originally envisioned under the master plan, which, if you guys know anything about me by now, I am a big proponent of just following plans when they make sense and not deviating from them. And so here we have a plan that makes sense. We have the opportunity to make that right, particularly in a circumstance where no one has been interred yet. Even if it was, that wouldn't necessarily be an issue, but we feel that this is a great opportunity to do right by the original design.
Thank you. So our original numbers for a columbarium were a lot more than 40, right?
For the number of niches.
So we're going to end up having another unit at some point down the road.
I think that's a yes, that's planned for.
Okay.
We'll wait until we get closer to that time, but yes.
I'm hearing you and seeing this break.
Yeah.
The master plan does call for more columbarium within that garden.
Good, thank you. Any other questions, comments for staff? Okay. I need a mover and a seconder that cemetery amendment bylaw number 2314-2021 be read the first time. White and Christopherson. Anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Christopherson?
It's good to see that we're moving forward with this. It's been a long time since we had the original request to come in, and I'm glad to see that it is going to be relocated and put into a garden setting, because that was the original vision. So I'm very pleased to see it moving forward.
I do want to add, just to make sure that no expectations are unmet here. The cemetery expansion project is a multi-year project here, so even though it will be going to its proper place this year, know that a lot of the beautification process is in the back half, so that'll be part of the 2022 plan. So just to make sure that that council and residents are aware that that is largely going to, the thing is going to make it more of a garden setting will be 2022.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves there. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And I need a mover seconder that the cemetery amendment bylaw 2314-2021 be read a second time. Luck and Etcher. And anyone want to speak to it at this stage? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Councillor White, you with us? Was that in favor?
Yes.
That's unanimous, carried. And the cemetery amendment bylaw 2314-2021 be read a third time. Etcher, Christopherson. And all in favor? Opposed? None, carried. And now it brings us to 8.2, the Animal Control Amendment Bylaw. And that is Mr. Lois. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is proposed some hopefully fairly minor changes to the Animal Control Bylaw, which comes in two parts. Firstly, so the public have brought to our attention there was a slight snafu when after we adopted the new zoning bylaw, we updated the Animal Control Bylaw to account for some of that. That was the first of the consequential amendments you made. Unfortunately, there was one we missed. The new zoning bylaw allowed for the keeping of hens in our property zoned R3, residential properties. And the animal control bylaw still had a minimum lot size, which was such that you couldn't possibly keep them in any property that was zoned R3. So that was an unfortunate incongruity between the two bylaws. So we are suggesting that you now amend the animal control bylaw to completely pull out the hen permitting system, which would then render it essentially like almost any other one of our bylaws, which would still be enforceable on the grounds of things like noise nuisance through the Good Neighbour bylaw, but would mean it would take the land use provisions out of the animal control bylaw and just revert them to the zoning bylaw, which is probably where they really ought to be. I say probably, I'm sure Catherine going on every side on right now. The second one of these is the second one of these is a request to essentially acknowledge the reality of the way we're currently operating the dog licensing system, but the amendment to the animal control bylaw in this instance would simply provide flexibility. The way that we were operating it before would still be valid under this, as would the new way. Essentially, as of late last year, the Finance Department identified that there were a series of efficiencies and savings that could be made for staff at the front counter by outsourcing this to a third-party company, in this case called Docupet. The upfront cost to the residents is the same, but the savings that we make allow us to, by not having to have staff process all the applications, allow us to still have an income stream while liberating staff to work on other projects and perform other tasks. So there are a series of amendments in this, which would, technical ones, essentially doing things like taking the phrase a license issued by the city and making it a license issued by the city or their agent. So this would allow us to properly do those operational issues. So those are the issues in the animal control bylaw at this point, and if you have any questions, I'm right here.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lopez? Councillor Van Gogh.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information. What does this service cost the city per year?
The document service?
Yes.
I'm afraid I would need to defer to Mr. Smith's turn his microphone on. I was going to say Mr. Anderson.
So it is a percentage based on the number of dogs that are licensed. So there isn't a fixed number. It is all dependent on the number of dogs. What I can say is that to give full clarity as to what the system is, we had a number of dogs that were licensed under our own efforts historically that was kind of averaged. And so if they don't work to get at least that number of licenses, there's a much lower proportion, and then above that number of licenses, they would have a higher proportion of the payment. So that's the structure, and I can say that from a taxpayer perspective, this is good value to residents and allows, of course, a lot of the online options that many residents have been asking for, despite the fact that we did hear some newer concerns most recently about the fact that people like just knowing that their information is with City Hall alone. So not to say that there aren't other concerns out there, but we feel that this is a good value for residents, and we'll happily report what that number is once we have a year worth of data.
That's fair. Thank you.
I understood a little bit different than that. I understood that there is no cost to us when it comes to the resident. If he orders a standard tag, they get the standard tag along with their license fee, and that the income to the DocuPets were for the add-ons.
So that is where a significant portion of their revenue comes from, is from the designer tags.
Yeah.
But no, they do take a base amount for each license that is transacted. There is no additional cost to the residents, which I think might be what you were alluding to. It's still the exact same license fee that was in place before. It's just shifting where some of those funds are allocated. The basis here is that instead of time to be basically paid to admin and city staff running the program, that is now being shifted to a contractor, but the net costs to the residents are the same.
Thank you. Councillor Itcher.
Well, I'm in favor of DocuPad simply because having the efficiencies of a system that's running continually has people receiving their license renewal information and chances of continual renewal. So I'm happy about that. But my question was actually about the hen permitting process. If we remove the restriction of the land size, would people just simply apply as they were, or if we approve this?
If you approve it as proposed, then there would, through your worship, Councillor Richard, there would be no permitting system in place anymore, so it would revert to, if you live in a property which is zoned for it, then you would be allowed to keep hens, and then you would be subject to all the ordinary nuisance regulations in the Good Neighbour Bylaw.
And is this only in R3, or would it be in R2 and R1 as well?
I'm looking at some of
Ms. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Etcher. The provisions that are in the zoning bylaw would apply to the zones that are listed there. So R1, R2, R3 are the main zones, and also agricultural zone 1 as well. So with regard to the sizes, the minimum sizes for those parcels would apply in this case.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Lopez? Okay, then I need a mover that council read Animal Control Amendment Bylaw number 2299, 2021, a first time. So Etcher and White. And anyone want to speak to this? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I need a mover and a seconder that council read Animal Control Amendment Bylaw number 2299, 2021 a second time. Etcher White. Any speakers? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None, carried. That was kind of a delayed reaction there. Okay, I need a mover and seconder that council read animal control amendment bylaw number 2299, 2021 a third time.
So moved.
Luck at chart. And anyone want to speak to it a third time? All in favor? Opposed? None, carried. Moving on to 8.3, fees and charges amendment bylaw. And Mr. Lois, this is yours again. Can you give us the staff report, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is proposing 3 changes to the fees and charges bylaw. The third section is probably the quickest to go through since you have just dealt with amendments to the animal licensing regimes. Schedule M would delete the hidden project permit fee, which would no longer exist if you continue to adopt the bylaw as you've given 3 readings. The same is the case for the dog license transfer fee, which would no longer be allowed. The small animals not otherwise specified in their schedules, that would be in the schedule would be moved into the dogs without an aggressive or dangerous designation to standardize some things. So that is simply clean up as a result of the animal control changes. The bigger changes, actually the second one, let's go backwards, the second one of those isn't even that large. The finance department have requested that a small charge be added for the provision of tax information and tax notices. That they've done research and determined that this is pretty much a midpoint. The fees are charged by a great many municipalities and currently typically range from about $7 to $15, so we went for 10. And then Schedule B1. Last fall we created Schedule B1 to allow us to accept trucked liquid waste. At the time, we did not anticipate exactly how this is going to happen. We assumed it would be delivered to the wastewater treatment plant. Subsequent to that, we're working on the construction of a dedicated disposal point for the trucked liquid waste. But unfortunately, the wording as we put it in doesn't exactly capture this, so this would just expand that to allow us for it to be deposited anywhere which was approved by the city. And then also, at the moment, our fees and charges bylaw only allows for, it simply says the sale of bulk water. This is typically used for industrial processes, but we're also in the process of constructing a new potable bulk water dispatching sales and dispatch point to go along with the commercial truck waste point. Because this has some additional costs to it, then we're proposing a slightly higher rate of $1.50 per cubic meter. Again, some extensive research has been done into the price which is charged by municipalities across BC, which ranges wildly. This is fairly well situated between all the possibilities, which went from something like 44 cents to $30 per cubic meter. And then a line that could be restricted in terms of water use restrictions, because of course we are aware we live in a very arid community and we want to make sure that we're not placing any undue obligations on ourselves. So those are the proposals in this fees and charges amendment.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lewis? Okay. I need a mover and a seconder that council read fees and charges amending bylaw number 2315, 2021 for the first time.
So moved.
Luck and Christofferson. And anyone want to debate this? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And I need a mover and a seconder that council read fees and charges amending bylaw number 2315, 2021 a second time. HR White. And anyone want to speak to this? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Mover and seconder that council read fees and charges amending bylaw number 2315, 2021 a third time. HR White. Anyone choose to speak to it? Something comes to mind? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Now we're on to 8.4, zoning amendment bylaw number 2316, 2020. Is that 2020 or 2021? Okay, thank you. Just took me that long to get the document out. Okay. So we have a staff report. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this particular file is with regard to 3350 Voght Street. Firstly, staff would like to remind council, the public, and the applicant that rezoning applications are processed by staff. They are not staff applications. While it's completely fine for residents and applicants to challenge staff assertions, it is not appropriate to direct comments at staff, as was done in the letters presented earlier tonight. So I just wanted to remind people to make sure that they have some decorum. Secondly, staff would like to provide an explanation for not providing a recommendation for this particular report. For clarity, staff have provided no recommendation. Staff have not recommended rejection or amendment, right? So that's an option for council, but that's not what staff are recommending. We're not recommending anything. Usually staff do provide a recommendation, and more often than not, recommendations are in favor of a proposed rezoning to proceed through first and second readings and to a public hearing. However, staff do not always provide a recommendation or provide support for an applicant's proposal, contrary to the applicant's statement that was made in the letter earlier. Staff provide technical information and expertise for council. Oftentimes this information is sufficient for staff to provide a recommended course of action. In this case, the city has been put in an awkward position by the applicant. At the previous rezoning, staff spoke in favor of the development and specifically in favor of the modular homes, as council will recall. However, staff also spoke to the importance of having buildings front Voght Street rather than back onto Voght Street. As this new rezoning proposal retains much of the needing housing that residents require, but removes the city's requested Voght Street design features, staff are both in favor of this and not in favor of this new proposal. Furthermore, council voted on an amendment to the previous proposed rezoning on whether to remove the R7 zone, effectively removing the townhomes. That's what we're talking about here, right? And that proposed amendment was rejected by council by a vote of 5-2. So it's quite awkward for staff to propose a proposal moving forward when just 6 months ago, council had voted to do the opposite of what is being proposed tonight. Due to the revisions to the proposed development as compared to the previous application and council's previous vote rejecting the removal of the R7 zone, staff cannot in good conscience make a recommendation for council. So that's why we have provided no recommendation, right? So we're leaving it up to you to do that. Having said that, 3 options are outlined for council at the end of the staff report. Council always have discretion to select one of the proposed options put forth by staff or to take any other course of action deemed appropriate. The first option listed in this staff report is to give first and second readings and direct staff to set a public hearing. Council always have the ability to amend a proposed bylaw. Council always have the discretion to decline to give further readings to a proposed bylaw. It is also council's discretion as to whether a proposed rezoning moves forward to a public hearing. As mentioned, staff's role is to provide information. So we're not here to make decisions for council. It's council's discretion in these matters. There were a couple comments in the letters earlier that I want to provide some clarity on as well. The first was around consistency with the OCP. It's absolutely true that this proposed rezoning is consistent with the OCP, as is outlined in the staff report. However, there's some context around that needs to be said. and that the OCP did not support the previous rezoning. We had to, or council had to amend the OCP, as you'll recall. So the only reason that this new proposal is consistent with the OCP is because council's already gone through this process once and amended the OCP. So there's some context there that was sort of left out of that letter from the applicant, and that's important to note. But yes, it is now consistent with the OCP as was stated by staff in the report. The second thing is around the townhomes. So it was detailed in the staff report of how that process went down. Staff asked the applicant to provide buildings fronting Voght Street. Buildings, right? Not a zone, not a type of building, buildings. The applicant said that they did not want to do commercial. They said that they did not have the funds to do an apartment building. So staff asked, well, what would you like to do? It was decided between both parties that modular homes fronting Voght Street likely wouldn't be appropriate. It was actually Steve Underwood from True Consulting who proposed townhouses to staff, and staff agreed that that could be supported. So that's how that came about. So to suggest that staff suggested townhouses or the R7 zone is disingenuous by the applicant. So that's really important to know for the public that that was proposed by the applicant, and staff brought that proposal to council, and it was processed through council back last fall. And importantly as well, the R7 zone was proposed by the applicant, right? That was not proposed by staff. So staff supported that and brought it forward to council, and then council processed the application. As a third point, Mr. Malinka noted that design features are usually at a later stage of development, and that's absolutely true, and I've been very clear myself with council that rezoning applications deal with land use, they deal with the zone, but the design is usually at the subdivision and development permit stages and the building permit stage as well. However, because of the context here, we're talking about removing the R7 zone. What we're really talking about is removing that idea of the buildings that front Voght Street, right? In this case, those would be townhouses under that proposal. So the idea here is, do we want buildings to front Voght Street or not, right? And so that's why that context matters in this rezoning, right? Most rezonings, you don't deal with that fine grain matter, but in this case, context matters. So those are the items that I wanted to bring to council's attention. I'll turn it back to you, over to your worship, and if there's any questions for staff, staff are here at your pleasure.
My question to staff would be, normally when we backed up at an amendment or a bylaw, we have rescinded it. But in this case, rescinding is outside of the limits of the time frame. So we can't rescind and just move to step 2. But my question to staff is, what happens to the previous 2 motions that we've already, or 3 now, that we've already got on record? Do we delete those and start over? Mr. Lois, is my question clear? Because it's not really clear for me.
So, Your Worship, I've forgotten the exact numbers, I'm afraid, but the OCP amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment were passed by council and adopted, and therefore they currently form part of the municipal land use legislation. If you decide not to give either first or second readings to this and don't progress through, then they will remain as is currently the case. If that would be the case if you reject it now, if you reject it after a public hearing, if you give it 3 readings and then simply never adopt it, or whatever. If you go through the entire process and adopt this proposed zoning bylaw, then that would replace the zoning bylaw as the municipal land use legislation. There is no proposal at this point to change the OCP because, as Mr. MacArthur noted, that has already been changed to allow for either this change or the current iteration, which is itself a change from bylaw 2284.
Okay. I think I got that. Did everyone hear what that process is? Okay. Councillor Buck.
Keep it real simple. Basically, this is a new application. That's it. This is a new application.
And I think it's a new application because it is a different application put in from the developer. This is not brought on from staff. This is brought on by the developer.
And enough time has lapsed too, right? Sorry. Sorry, and enough time has lapsed as well, correct? Because if it was within 6 months, we just don't even need to look at it. But it's after 6 months, now it's considered an application. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Luck, through your worship. Generally, yes, that is our bylaw, our procedure bylaw that says 6 months. And in fact, in this one, though, there is a bit of a technicality there. Because the amendment to the proposed bylaw was put forward by a member of council, the applicant asked for that 6 month period to be waived because it wasn't their proposal, that amendment to remove the R7 before. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a technicality here, but basically we didn't need to wait the 6 months. It's turned out that because of the referral process, the application, getting in the information, it's ended up being 6 months anyways, but yes, either way, we're beyond the 6 months now.
Thank you very much.
6 months, I thought it was 3, so I'm glad to clarify that. And Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add one point further to Mr. MacArthur's comments that I love when public, council, developers, that there's opportunities for feedback, for input, and we're going to celebrate that, encourage that at every turn. The only challenge that I saw here is when something devolves into functionally what I see as pointing fingers, and I feel very badly about that because the last thing we want to do is to turn around and point fingers at anybody else, and we don't like having fingers pointed at. What I can say is that had this not come forward in the past, where there wasn't all of the previous considerations, of course, I think the way staff approaches this situation ends up being somewhat different. But where staff has made public comments, has taken particular positions, there has been council votes, this is complicated. This is challenging, and I want the developer and I want the residents to know that their position is valid. You know, when they say, hey, we maybe find that this is not going to be economically viable for us to develop in the current way. We're not able to find anybody who wants to build townhomes on that site. The comments that the public made the last time around with some of the concerns around the townhomes, this in no way minimizes that. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that when Mr. MacArthur is making, recommendations or providing comments, he's largely suggesting that in an ideal world, this build-out would look better if it had homes fronting Voght Street, that is what the ideal to be strived for, and so where that's what the current zoning entails, there isn't a huge appetite to be rah-rah-rah gung-ho for changing it to something that may in the end not be as attractive. That being said, life is never clear, and we haven't had the opportunity to see what the new proposal is going to look like. We haven't had the opportunity to hear from the public, and so staff is never trying to get in the way of any type of public process. We're absolutely comfortable and content to have council move this forward to first and second reading, and in fact, we would be very surprised if you didn't. It's just a matter of acknowledging that given everything that's happened, it's difficult to put out that we fully recommend this application. And I want everyone to know as well that Don was very, very cautious in how he approached feeling, okay, well, what should I do? In terms of professional integrity and everything else that goes with it. And so if there is any frustration, please know that I am 100% in this camp. We talked about this. Mr. Lois talked about it as well. And so I invite any positive discussion about how we can do things better in the future, but the finger pointing I always find to be very discouraging, and I just wanted to echo those remarks.
And I wanted to repeat that from council side. We expect our staff to comply with some of our wishes. And what we had decided as council was that we wanted that safe community as part of our plan. So yes, we expect you to stand up for it and try to get developers to do that. But in this case, they've decided they don't want to. So we'll relook at it, and that's what we're doing tonight. I'm not sure who got here first. Councilor Richer.
I'm really glad that this has come forward so that we can look at this with fresh eyes, because sometimes you vote on things and then you get to look at a decision that you make and think, well, could it be different? And I think when we look at the housing situation and see the shortage of affordable housing and seeing the cost of homes increase exponentially, it's ridiculous. The cost of lumber, a 300% increase in the lot since April 2020, and other figures you see, builders reports and information that you find on costs that, if we have the opportunity to move something forward for public council that could maybe provide options of housing for people, maybe it looks a little different. Maybe it's modular homes that are facing the front and the parking's in the back. But that's not up to us to decide it. The plan will come later. And, I just think there's something that we should just be open to, and anything that, from what I've seen in the conceptual site plan, that looks quite nice. And the Gallagher development, the photos that I've seen are very nice, and I think we should seriously consider this. But anyway, thank you.
And I also, I have Councillor White on the line, but I do want to say too that each time we looked at a zoning bylaw, I have stated from the chair that we look at the land use. Is the use the right for the area? And that development and other issues would be coming later. He stressed it in his reports, and I've also stressed it from the chair. Mr. Rose.
Forgive me, Your Worship, but if you are done with questions to staff and moving into debate on the merits of the proposal, I suggest you put a motion on the table.
Councillor White, is your question for staff?
No, I just want to say what I think.
Okay, can you, can we get this on the table then? Can we put, that we give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 2316/2021 and direct staff to schedule a public hearing? And now we're on that. You can speak your mind.
Okay. I'm all for moving forward and development. However, on this particular project, I didn't support it when it came to council the first time around. And the reason that I didn't was because we went to a public meeting and I did not feel that they came to the table with a clear picture then of exactly what they wanted. There was a lot of controversy with the public, and we got beat up about it for a little while. And council, other than myself, went ahead and supported it. And the public opinion went on for quite some time. And now here we are back here again. And I'm wondering if they're coming with an actual clear picture, or if this is just another, well, maybe this is what we should do. And so I haven't decided yet how I'm going to handle this one, but I do think when these things do come to council, and when especially when we're involved in rezoning, and I think it needs to come to council with an actual clear picture of exactly what is happening. And just about every question I asked at that public meeting could not be answered clearly. That's how I feel about it. Thanks.
Councillor Fair. Oh, sorry, Councillor Fair, and then back to you, Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to say that I can comprehend the developer's difficulties at this point. What I would like to say about that this development is that I think there's a real opportunity to make an improvement to that section of Merritt. You know, like as it has been said in the report, it used to be a highway, it's not a highway anymore, and this is a chance for us to make that into something much more of a nice community feature. So I just hope that doesn't get lost in the process, and I hope that remains in everyone's sort of focal point here as part of this. Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
Well, I'm glad to be able to revisit this. I like the reduced number of dwellings and the fact that we've heard from the public. I'm responding to it, and I'd like to hear more from the public if we go to another public meeting. And I really appreciate the comments from staff. I was quite taken aback by some of the comments from the public, zeroing in on specific staff members, which I thought was totally inappropriate. And I appreciate the explanation that we got. And I hope that when the public do have concerns, and everybody has an opinion, that they do so in a respectful manner. I was quite chagrined by the tone of some of the letters that came in. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this? Now, I know we've got a motion for first, second, and public hearing, but I think...
If we can back that up to just first reading.
Yes, I was going to do that. Can we have just first reading to bylaw number 231621? Are you moving?
Nope,
Okay,
I can move it.
can you?
Didn't we just move it?
Well,
First reading, yeah.
yes, first reading only.
Oh,
I read
yeah.
I read first, second, and public hearing, so we're now waiting now.
Yeah, just first reading. I'll move that.
Thank you. And so Luck and Christopherson?
You did first already.
Well, we did all three of them.
No, it was first reading and public hearing was what was read the first.
Yeah.
So
Oh, is that
it
what
was
it
a
is?
hybrid of all of them. So.
Okay,
We're just trying to speed things up.
Take the whole thing back and go back to the first reading.
Yeah. So
First reading
I
only.
move for first reading.
And that's what I said.
yeah, that's where we are now. And did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just quick comment. I have no problem with coming back because, as I stated earlier, this is like a new application, although we certainly won't want to see this become a norm in our city. As you know, somebody doesn't like what they get and they come back in 6 months and 6 months in a day and ask for a rezoning again or those kind of things. It would be a little bit contentious here with the council. I think it would be a little disconcerting for us all. I will support the first and second, going to a public hearing again. I don't know what we'll accomplish from that, to tell you the truth. I think we've heard from the public and know a lot of things, but I think it's due process, and I always default to a public hearing. I think that's just appropriate. The other thing is that I hope that between now and then, or certainly after, we come with a compromise on this, because I agree with Councillor Fair's comment here and some staff, is that we do want to beautify Voght Street. We want to make it better. You have these high fences on there, it's like you're going to be driving down a tunnel. And I think we're trying, and that's what councils are elected to do, is make changes in the city to change cities and do things the right way. So I was a little disconcerted about some of the comments that were made, so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to sit down with staff and this developer to come up with a compromise before we even get to this point. I think there's one out there, it's just that if they just need to come out and figure that out. But I just want to remind people again, I know I got beat up on this again, I think that property was zoned before we changed the zoning to 3 5-story buildings that have gone there. Is that correct? So we've done a big, I mean, going down the townhouses, I know people don't like that, but if we'd left it alone, there'd have been 3 5-story towers on that lot, and that's what could have been accommodated there. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's what they could have done there. So I'm going to support this, and hopefully we'll come up with that compromise in the next little bit. So thank you.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Worship. And just to clarify on that point, the previous zoning on the property allowed 5 stories. So whether there could be 3 buildings or more or less, there were probably enough space for 3, but certainly 5 stories was what it was zoned for previous to the rezoning in the fall.
Thank you.
Anybody else? This is still first reading. Call question, all in favor? Opposed, none. I'd like to ask for a mover and seconder that council give second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 2316/2021.
So
Etchart and White. And it's open for discussion. Councillor Etchart.
I just wanted to comment and say that, when we look at some of these things, and if it does get rezoned as R4 and it's modular housing, even just down the street, when you look at McCallum Gardens and Parkview, those are single-family detached, and they're not necessarily all facing the street and not with high fences, but that looks nice. Those properties look nice, and they're along the road. They're closer to town, but we can really be open and reconsider. And the other thing is too, is that if it was zoned and nothing's happened in 6 months and no development, well, maybe we need to look at the change so that nice homes can go up there and some beautification can happen with the lot. If nothing's happening because maybe the investment isn't there, maybe with a modular project, which are essentially built and then assembled on site, but it could be quite a nice development, I think, based on this conceptual plan. Thank you.
Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And I need a mover and seconder that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Christopherson and Etchart. Any questions here? Doesn't look like it. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Thank you. Now, new business 9.1, non-medical cannabis retail store licensing. Mr. Lewis, staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. You may recall a few meetings back, the Williams Lake First Nation attended as a delegation to introduce themselves so that they wouldn't be strangers when this application came forward, as it has now done from the LCRB. Merritt has considered, I think, 4 applications from the LCRB before, and so staff are recommending that we follow the same procedure on this occasion as we have on the previous ones, where council would direct staff to gather residents' views by requesting written submissions in response to posting public notice at 2102 Clochena Avenue, issuing notices to residents within 100 feet of the property, and publishing notices in 2 consecutive editions of the Merritt Herald. I was thinking as I wrote that sounds like an incredibly COVID way to gather residents' views, but that is actually a direct quote from the last report written by Mr. Smith, so with the address changed obviously. So that is the way that we've always done it in Merritt, so we're recommending the same procedure by this time. The report lays out the proposed location that they're bringing forward for the store and the relation that that has to the buffer zones in our existing zoning bylaw. Obviously, there used to be a count of 4 stores in Merritt, but that was lifted, and there are currently only 2 operational stores. So if council choose to proceed with gathering residents' views, then you will be able to make any kind of a recommendation you like to the LCRB, or no recommendation if you ultimately decide not to. But if you decide not to undergo consultation, then that would functionally kill the application at this time, because the only way a license can be issued is if council issues a positive recommendation, and in order to issue any recommendation, you need to undergo a consultation.
Thank you. Is everyone clear on that? If not, Mr. Lewis is here to answer questions. So any questions for Mr. Lewis? Okay, it's clear. Thank you. And so I need a motion that council directs staff to gather residents' views regarding the proposed retail cannabis license at 2101 Oceana Avenue by requesting written submissions in response to posting public notice at 2102 Oceana Avenue, issuing notices to residents within 100 feet of the property, and by public...
So 2101, not 2102?
It was a typo in the resolution.
Oh, it's a typo. Okay, sorry. Public notice at 210. I read them both. Okay. Public notice at 2101 Oceana Avenue, issuing notices to residents within 100 feet of the property, and by publishing notices in 2 consecutive editions of the Merritt Herald.
Second.
So Christopherson and Luck, and debate is open on this one. Is there any word from the applicants as to whether or not they've consulted with First Nations in the community? That was a request that I had. It wasn't a council directive, but it was a request. Mr. Lewis?
Your Worship, I think the only comments that we've had from them are in the actual application itself, which forms part of your agenda pack. So we've got the site locations and things. I'm unaware of anything that, any further consultation they've undergone, although I see Mr. Smith also raised his hand up.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I think there's 2 points that we would absolutely make. Is if there is genuine concern, we would invite any parties who have that concern to make it known through this upcoming process. So I think that would be one of the first comments, as well as the applicant will have an opportunity to, you'll speak with them once more. Certainly they'll be invited to attend, likely digitally if that's where we're still at with restrictions, and you can ask that question of them directly at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Oh, we've already gone into the debate first. So this is now our time.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I like this idea of requesting this business to work with our local First Nations. And if council did make that a formal request, or I guess the better question is council able to make that type of formal request? And if it's not met, then we don't move forward. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
What you can do and what I would recommend you doing are probably 2 different things in this instance. It would be very atypical to make that request really of any form of business. I think that what I would say is if there are concerns of any First Nation through this process, I really think that they should make those concerns known through the established process instead of putting what may be seen as an arbitrary restriction, because again, we didn't ask the other 2 cannabis businesses to make any special consultation of First Nations in this process. It would only be because this in and of itself is a First Nation, and so there might be special considerations with that, but we really want to treat every applicant the same way. So again, what is technically within your authority versus what I would recommend might be different on this one, and I would recommend that you stick to the normal process.
And I agree with that. I intentionally did not make it formal. I asked them just to connect with the First Nations because it is their community, our local First Nations, but there is no formality to it at this point. Did I see a red light flashing? Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor White? Opposed. Okay. Carried. Okay, on to 9.2, Gold Country. Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight, there's the Gold Country Community Society report. In 2015, the City of Merritt entered into a 3-year agreement with Gold Country Community Society. The Society assists small communities in regional electoral areas in the Thompson-Nicollet Regional District in providing tourism coverage and marketing. One of the programs offered was the Geo Tour program. The annual membership was $8,400. Since 2015, the City of Merritt Economic Development and Tourism Department has developed a strong branding program, a wide network of partnerships, and in-house marketing materials which promote tourism in Merritt and throughout the Nicola Valley. In January of 2020, Council formally resolved to not renew the agreement with the Society, and the letter was sent to the Society advising the cities to withdraw from the program. The City of Merritt is actively engaged in the 2019 recovery initiatives regarding mountain biking, fishing, and tourism to ensure that we are well positioned, be open for tourism as restrictions begin to ease and the public resumes traveling. At this time, the Society is offering to maintain the geocaches in the City of Merritt at a rate of $4,000 annually. This cost would include maintenance of the 11 existing geocaches in the Merritt area, continued inclusion in the Geo Tour program, and promotion at trade shows. There would be no new geocaches that would be developed. If Council opts not to participate in this program, the geocaches would be archived and reference to them would be removed from the geotourism website. Thank you, Worship. I'm available for any questions as is close step. Two together. Well, George.
That was so awesome.
I didn't even catch it. Councillor Hitcher. Question for staff. We
No,
have
it's
a
just a
motion.
comment. That's just a comment.
Okay, so do we want questions for staff?
I'm just wondering if I should step out of this one.
Are you connected with Gold Country? I don't anticipate any conflict, but if you anticipate your conflict, that's when you declare.
No, I don't.
Okay. Do we have a motion on the table? Okay, so we're not having questions for staff. So a motion, I need a motion that the May 14th, 2021 report of the Deputy Corporate Officer entitled Gold Country Community Society Gold Country Geo Tour be received for information.
So moved.
And
Second.
And so Luck and Fair. And now we have Councillor Richard.
We haven't heard from them in 16 months and had expressed their interest in terminating the contract, and so now they're looking for support for the geocache. But previously they wanted to meet on their terms and not the terms of our economic development manager, but they want our contribution, and it seemed like we had better projects on the go that we could invest our money in, and that's why we decided not to go with that route. So if they want to take our geocaches and remove us from the project, I think that we should continue on that route and keep our money and then, support other things locally, other projects that we have. Just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fair.
Thank you. So I looked at the numbers here for geocaching, and then I did a little bit of online research, and it sort of indicated to me that geocaching may have peaked, but it's still alive and well. So from that perspective, I think that Merritt has something to be gained from continuing to have geocaches. However, I also looked at the marketing that's done online for Merritt, which is still the same as it always was and was out of date then, still is now. So I certainly wouldn't recommend entering back into a full agreement there, but I think just from the perspective of geocaching, that might be a worthwhile thing to maintain. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Luck.
I agree with Councillor Etchard on this one. I don't think there's been any value been added in the last little while, like 16, 17 months since they last spoke to us and everything from Gold Country. I look at their annual bill for being a member of the group would be $8,400, and they want half of that just for geocaching. I was a little taken aback by the number, you know. So no, I can't support this, and I moved a motion for information only, and I stand with that motion.
And seeing no other hands up, I'm also looking at where these geocaches are located, and there's potentially 2 in our city. The rest of them are Area M and Area N, which is TNRD, and they're also asking Area M and N for funding as well. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention. Did you have any questions, Councillor Richard?
Basically, just agreeing with Councillor Luck there. Sometimes you just need to cut your losses and move on, and keep with the right decision that you made at the time. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Brings us to notices of motion. Any notices of motion from council? Seeing none, I'm moving on to reports from council. Any reports from council? Yes. Councillor White. Oops. Can you microphone?
Councillor Bangu has received a level 1 certificate in local government leadership. This certificate was presented by the prestigious Local Government Leadership Academy. Only 2 other councillors received it besides Councillor Bangu, so I just think he needs a talk.
All right.
And any other report from council? Mr. Smith, you're, Mr. is not council, but I will give you that leeway.
I wanted to make sure I took this opportunity, even though I recognize it's during the council report section. You guys will know, and hopefully the public will by now as well, but this is Mr. George's last meeting with the City of Merritt. He's moving on to another opportunity at another municipality, and I personally want to thank him for the remarkable contributions that he has made here at the City of Merritt for the last 5.5 years. He's been a committed and dedicated employee and has advanced many of the projects in the areas of economic development, tourism, and communication. So I'd like to give a round of applause to Will and thank him for his years of service. Thank you for allowing me that foray, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
The title starts with a C.
Yeah.
This is getting worse.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, there I go again. Mr. George, we appreciate your contribution, not just at the staff level, but also at the council level. And I know you brought me through some agonizing video series a while back, and I appreciate all your work that you did for me during that time, but also the whole time. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Your Worship. John.
I think we as council wish you all the best. Any other reports? Mr. Councillor in charge. Now I'm getting all mixed up.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, I am, but a bad roll.
Wasn't even the right number of elected members.
You'd think I could know 6, 7 people, right?
I was going to want to bring this up as a notice of motion, but we have heard from a few residents with animals, and being that we were just going over the animal control bylaw, I know some people are quite concerned about how cats aren't considered in the animal control bylaw 2241 that was passed in 2018 by the previous council. So I'm wondering if maybe that's something that we could maybe bring up at a future meeting for consideration, because there's some areas where cats are being encouraged to live in parks and whatnot, and so it's something I'm hearing from a couple of residents in town that are concerned with damage and feces and things in their backyards where they don't have cats, and yet they have cats living there making a mess. I'm concerned about whether other animals can come there that are being fed there, so that's just one thing that I've had from a resident recently.
Now, are we needing a motion on this from staff? Mr. Smith?
I do think if you would be amenable, Councillor Richard, perhaps going back and adding that as one of the notice of motions, and we could rephrase something to the effect that council consider regulating cats in the animal control bylaw, something as simple as that, and then that could be considered at an upcoming meeting.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Throwing pigeons.
And marmots too, I heard.
There's history to that word. Thank you. Any other reports from council? Okay, moving on to information items, and Conayt Friendship is asking us for 5 boulders, 2 to 3 feet in diameter. We happen to have some of those in our stockpile of boulders. And I believe that Mr. Henderson says this is okay to provide this for this project. It's an honorable project that we'd like to be a part of. And yes, we have the boulders. And would you like us to make a motion on that, Mr. Smith?
I think that a motion that council donate 5 boulders to Conayt Friendship Society would be perfectly acceptable.
For this,
yeah. More than anything, we just didn't want to do it. We want council to know about it before we're giving away what is technically an asset. Generally, you don't think of big rocks as assets. But we are going to sell them.
Assets.
We will be selling the assets.
The donation side to it becomes that of council.
That's correct.
Only 3, they have to pay for 2.
Hi, 2 get 3.
You're going to move, are you moving?
Yes.
Oh, you're seconding that. You're moving, you're seconding.
Sure.
Christopherson, Benson.
So
Okay,
good, no big deal, we're a team. I'm in favor of.
you're,
I would like to move that the City of Merritt donate 5 boulders to this initiative here and allow them to choose those 5 boulders.
Ooh, up the ante a little bit.
So long as it's not from the bottom.
Can you second? Okay. Anybody want to speak to that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Fair. I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm very glad that we're in an opportunity to be able to support this cause. A little ironic that we're gifting some rocks, but still glad that we're supporting.
Yeah, it's a worthy cause.
Yes.
Thank you. So we are now into closed session. Pardon me?
We just need a resolution.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask that the meeting be closed to the public under Community Charter Section 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality, and C, labor relations or other employee relations. Mover?
Second.
White, Luck, and all in favor? Opposed, none, carried. So, and we need to take a 10-minute break.